As the council chamber fell into an uncomfortable silence, Ambassador Krell's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of irritation in Vexari body language. The holographic displays still hovered above the central platform, images of Earth rotating slowly for all representatives to see. "I fail to understand the delay," Krell said, his translator converting the chittering sounds into the standard galactic tongue. "The application meets all criteria for Class 3 acquisition. The inhabitants show no signs of unified government, possess no faster-than-light capabilities, and their weaponry relies primarily on chemical propellants and crude atomic devices." Councillor Jandar leaned forward, his four eyes blinking in sequence, a gesture that signaled deep consideration among his species. "Perhaps," he said, "but something about these humans troubles me." He gestured with a scaled hand, and a holographic display zoomed in on a city street. Humans of different sizes, colors, and clothing moved in seemingly chaotic patterns. "Look at them," Jandar continued. "No biological specialization, yet they organize without a hive structure. No telepathic abilities, yet they coordinate complex activities. No standardized form, yet they function as a collective." The Morrigan representative, a luminescent being composed primarily of structured light, pulsed with curiosity. "Their communication methods are indeed unusual. They maintain thousands of distinct languages rather than evolving toward a unified expression system." Krell's exoskeleton rattled with dismissive laughter. "Precisely my point. Their fragmentation makes them ideal for conquest. The Vexari Empire has successfully assimilated 17 comparable species in the past standard millennium. This will be no different." Jandar manipulated the display again, focusing on different scenes from Earth: a surgeon performing a complex operation, children playing an improvisational game, engineers constructing a bridge, artists creating varied works. "These are not the actions of a pre-unified species according to our traditional metrics," he observed quietly. "They exhibit conflicting markers. Their technology advances asymmetrically. Some areas show remarkable sophistication, while others remain primitive." "Irrelevant," Krell insisted. "Our conquest protocols account for such variations. The application is sound." The Scythian representative, a being of metallic segments arranged in a humanoid configuration, interjected with a series of harmonic tones. "The Vexari Empire has rights under the Non-Interference Treaty to petition for conquest of pre-spacefaring civilizations. The Council cannot deny their application without cause." Jandar's secondary eyes narrowed slightly. "I am not denying the application. I am requesting comprehensive data before approval. The Galactic Authority exists to maintain order, not to rubber-stamp conquests." Krell's posture stiffened. "The delay is unnecessary. Every moment we wait, these humans continue to deplete valuable planetary resources while making no contribution to galactic prosperity. Then surely a small delay will make little difference," Jandar replied smoothly. "The Vexari have conquered 17 species, as you've reminded us. Surely one more requires no particular haste." Krell's mandibles clicked once, sharply, a gesture of capitulation. "We will provide the requested data, but the Empire formally notes its protest at this special scrutiny." As the Council moved to the next item on its agenda, Jandar quietly instructed his personal assistant to prepare a direct observation vessel. Something about these humans warranted a closer look, preferably before the Vexari launched their inevitable invasion. What he couldn't admit in the Council chamber was his growing suspicion. The Vexari weren't seeking this conquest for resources or territory. They were moving with unusual urgency, almost as if they feared what these humans might become if left undisturbed. Dr. Sophia Chen's fingers flew across the holographic interface as she analyzed the alien transmission patterns. The bunker beneath Geneva hummed with activity. Scientists, linguists, and military personnel from every major nation, working with unprecedented cooperation. "The Vexari language contains embedded command structures," she explained to the assembled leaders. "Their entire communication system evolved from a hive mentality, Orders and responses, nothing else. No poetry, no jokes, no hypotheticals. The Secretary General leaned forward. And this helps us how, exactly? Chen smiled. It means they've never had to defend against mimetic warfare. Their systems are designed to process direct commands, not irony or metaphor or nonsense. On the main screen, live feeds showed the Vexeri ships maintaining their perfect formation above Earth. Smaller screens displayed the global response, not just military mobilization, but a stranger phenomenon. Across social media platforms, millions of people were creating and sharing content about the aliens. Memes, songs, dance challenges, crude animations depicting the Vexeri ships in increasingly ridiculous scenarios. You want to fight an advanced alien species with internet jokes. The Russian defense minister's translator couldn't quite capture his incredulous tone. Not fight. Confuse. Chen gestured to a young woman sitting at a nearby terminal. Dr. Patel has identified exploitable patterns in their transmission protocols. We believe their communication systems and ours share certain fundamental similarities. They're using electromagnetic spectrum, compression algorithms, packet-based data transfers. Dr. Patel nodded, which means we can respond in ways their systems will attempt to process, but cannot properly categorize. It's like feeding a strict vegetarian a plant that looks and tastes exactly like meat. Their mental framework can't handle the contradiction. In orbit, Commander Thrix stared at his communication console with mounting frustration. The human responses made no sense. Some were clearly attempting to communicate, using languages his translation matrix could process. But the content was perplexing. They're sending us images of small furry creatures with text overlaid. His communication officer reported. Audio files of rhythmic sounds with repetitive vocalizations, visual sequences of humans moving in synchronization, and something called rickrolling that appears 2,317 times in different formats. Frix's mandibles clicked in irritation. Are they attempting to negotiate or not? Unknown, Commander. Their formal diplomatic channels are requesting more time to consider our generous offer, while these other transmissions continue unabated. The invasion timetable was precise. Any deviation risked censure from the High Command. Yet something about the human response pattern disturbed Thrix's instincts. No species had ever reacted this way to first contact. Deploy the peripheral scanning drones, he ordered. I want to know what they're actually doing while they distract us with this nonsense. As the drones descended toward Earth's atmosphere, they encountered something unexpected. A chaotic barrage of signals on frequencies the Vexeri considered too inefficient for practical use. The humans were communicating on thousands of channels simultaneously, with no discernible pattern or hierarchy. In the Geneva bunker, Dr. Chen watched the drone deployment on radar. They're trying to figure out what we're really up to, she said. Phase 1 is working. Begin Phase 2. Around the world, teams of hackers, programmers, and signal specialists activated their prepared countermeasures. The real battle for Earth wasn't being fought with weapons. Not yet. It was being fought with information, in formats the Vexeri evolutionary history had never prepared them to understand. And Earth, messy, chaotic, creative Earth, had been unwittingly preparing for this kind of asymmetric warfare since humans first learned to tell jokes their enemies didn't understand. Raj Patel hadn't slept in 36 hours, sustained only by caffeine and the electric thrill of what his team was accomplishing. His bedroom in Mumbai had transformed into an impromptu command center, screens showing real-time collaboration with hackers and programmers across the globe. They're adapting, called out Mai, his counterpart in Taiwan. Her voice came through his headset as she shared her screen. The Vexari are attempting to isolate their primary command channels from our interference. Raj grinned, dark circles under his eyes doing nothing to diminish his enthusiasm. Perfect. That means they're rerouting everything through their auxiliary systems, exactly as we predicted. The collaborative plan was working. Humans had taken what seemed like a hopeless disadvantage, their technological inferiority, and transformed it into an unexpected strength. While the Vexari relied on centralized, homogeneous systems, Earth's technology had evolved through competing standards, incompatible protocols, and endless workarounds. What the aliens saw as primitive inefficiency was actually battle-tested resilience. On the Vexari flagship, Commander Thrix watched in growing horror as system after system reported anomalies. The humans had somehow penetrated their defenses not through brute force, but through bewildering infiltration techniques that seemed to exploit the very architecture of Vexari computing. "How is this possible?" he demanded, chitinous limbs striking the command console. "They haven't even developed basic interplanetary travel." His chief systems officer's antennae drooped in submission. "Their attack vectors are unconventional, Commander. They're exploiting permissions conflicts in our communication protocols. Our systems are designed for efficiency and clarity, not whatever this is." In Rio de Janeiro, a mixed team of military personnel, civilian engineers, and former street gang members constructed makeshift barricades against the expected ground assault. What made these defenses unique wasn't their physical construction, but the jury-rigged electronic countermeasures integrated into them. Repurposed civilian technology modified according to patterns discovered in the Vexari transmissions. Similar preparations unfolded globally, each region adapting common strategies to local resources and knowledge. No central command directed these efforts. Instead, effective approaches spread virally through digital networks, evolving and improving with each implementation. When the Vexari ground forces finally deployed, dropping from orbit in perfect geometric formations, they encountered a defense that defied their tactical simulations. Their enemies weren't where predictions placed them. Ambushes came from impossible angles. Communication jamming occurred through methods their equipment couldn't identify. In Cairo, a team led by Dr. Fatima Hassan had repurposed cosmetic-grade reflective compounds into a spray that confused Vexari targeting systems. The formula had been developed overnight, tested in university labs, and distributed to defense forces within hours. The particles create a scattering effect that disrupts their visual spectrum. She explained to military officers as civilian volunteers applied the substance to buildings and vehicles. "It won't stop them permanently, but it will buy us time." Time was the critical resource. With each passing hour, humans learned more about their adversaries, adapted more effectively, and shared their discoveries more widely. In the Galactic Authority monitoring station, Counselor Jandar watched the unexpected resistance with growing fascination. The standard conquest timeline had already been shattered. The Vexari should have secured their primary objectives within the first 12 hours. Instead, they were faltering, confused by an enemy that refused to behave according to any recognizable doctrine. "These humans," he murmured to his assistant, "may be the most dangerous species we've ever encountered." The assistant tilted its head quizzically. "Because of hidden technology." "No," Jandar replied. "Because they don't know what's impossible until after they've done it." Professor Marek Nowak adjusted his glasses as he studied the captured Vexari code fragments on his screen. His small apartment in Warsaw had become an unlikely nexus for a global effort to understand alien computation. Graduate students and fellow academics crowded around him, while thousands more collaborated remotely. "The elegance is remarkable," he murmured, fingers tracing patterns across the display. "Their quantum algorithms are perfectly optimized. No redundancy, no error correction, no adaptation pathways." A former student leaned forward. "That's good, right? It means they're advanced. It means they're vulnerable," Nowak corrected. "When I developed my theoretical framework 30 years ago, reviewers rejected it for being too inefficient. They said no practical system would include so many fallback procedures." His eyes twinkled behind thick lenses. "But humans build messy systems because we expect things to go wrong. The Vexari built perfect systems because they never anticipated anyone thinking differently." On the Vexari command ship, Commander Thrix faced a situation unprecedented in the Empire's conquest history. Half his fleet was compromised by cascading system failures, and ground forces reported disastrous encounters with human defenders. Most troubling of all, the humans weren't following any recognizable strategy. They're using civilian communication networks to coordinate military responses, his tactical officer reported with mandibles clicking in confusion. Medical professionals are advising defense forces on biological vulnerabilities in our troops. Entertainment creators are designing countermeasures. Children are contributing tactical suggestions. It makes no sense. Fricks hissed. A species should specialize to achieve efficiency. Their approach is chaos. Yet this chaos was proving devastatingly effective. The Vexari battle doctrine, refined across thousands of conquests, assumed enemies would follow logical patterns, retreat to defensible positions, prioritize military assets, establish clear chains of command. The humans did none of these things. Instead, Earth responded like an organism with no central brain, but countless neural connections. When the Vexari adapted to one approach, humans abandoned it without hesitation and tried something entirely different. Across the planet, impossible collaborations yielded unexpected results. Perfume manufacturers repurposed scent molecules to confuse Vexari sensory systems. Gaming companies donated advanced servers to process captured alien data. Retired engineers emerged from seclusion to offer insights from outdated technologies that happened to share principles with Vexari systems. In her Geneva command center, Dr. Chen received reports of these developments with growing confidence. Their greatest weakness is predictability, she explained to world leaders. The Vexari evolved from a hive species. They literally cannot conceive of our level of individual initiative. Every human who makes an unexpected decision is another variable that they can't compute. The Secretary General frowned. But surely an advanced species understands the concept of improvisation. Understanding a concept intellectually is different from being evolutionarily equipped to respond to it, Chen replied. Imagine playing chess against an opponent who keeps introducing new pieces with different rules. No matter how good you are at chess, you'd be overwhelmed. As if confirming her analysis, alarms suddenly blared. Satellite imagery showed the Vexari flagship preparing its primary weapon system, a planet cracker capable of rendering continents uninhabitable. They're escalating, someone whispered. Chen's expression remained calm. No, they're panicking, and that means Professor Noack's team has exactly the opening they need. Halfway across the world, the elderly professor entered the final sequence of his improvised counter-protocol, a deliberately inefficient algorithm designed to create precisely the sort of logical paradox the perfect Vexari systems could never resolve. Sometimes, he told his team with a gentle smile, the best approach is to ask a question with no answer. The Galactic Authority vessel materialized at the edge of Earth's solar system, its crystalline hull shimmering with the aftereffects of quantum displacement. Unlike the aggressive silhouettes of Vexari warships, this diplomatic craft resembled an enormous translucent lotus blossom, its petals housing environments for dozens of different species. Counselor Jandar stood on the observation deck, all four eyes widened at the scene before him. The Vexari invasion fleet hung in disarray around Earth, once perfect formations now scattered, several ships completely dark, others emitting erratic energy signatures. Unprecedented, murmured his senior advisor, a methane-breathing entity whose containment suit bubbled with agitation. No pre-unified species has ever repelled a Class 3 conquest force. Jandar's scales shifted color slightly, indicating deep concern. They were misclassified. The question is, what are they? The Authority vessel transmitted standard diplomatic protocols on all frequencies as they approached Earth orbit. Within moments, they received a response, not from a single source, but from hundreds simultaneously, eventually consolidating into a coherent message. Galactic Authority representatives, welcome to Earth. We've anticipated your arrival and prepared appropriate accommodations at our lunar facility. Transmission follows with environmental specifications for each member of your delegation. The authorities' xenobiologists were astonished. The detailed atmospheric requirements, pressure variations, and biochemical parameters for each species, information that would normally require months of careful diplomatic exchange, had been assembled within days, apparently extrapolated from limited data gathered from Vexeri communications. How could they possibly know our requirements? Demanded the Scythian representative, metallic segments clicking with suspicion. Jandar studied the human transmission. They guessed. Then they built environments for every possibility they could imagine. Wasteful. The Scythian responded. Inefficient. Creative, Jandar corrected. And effective. The journey to the lunar surface revealed more surprises. The human base, hastily constructed from modules originally designed for scientific research, had been reconfigured into a diplomatic facility. Solar arrays provided power, while ingenious atmospheric cycling systems created self-contained biomes for each delegation member. Dr. Chen greeted the authority representatives at the airlock, her environmental suit bearing handwritten labels in multiple alien scripts, a crude but functional attempt at diplomatic courtesy. Counselor Jandar, she said, pronunciation perfect despite the physical impossibility of human vocal cords producing certain sounds in his language. We apologize for the primitive accommodations. We had little time to prepare. Jandar studied her carefully. Yet you knew we would come. Chen's smile held no deception. We hoped. After analyzing Vexeri communications, we realized they operated within a larger governmental framework. It seemed logical that unauthorized aggression might trigger intervention. The diplomatic chamber itself demonstrated human adaptability. Furnishings had been arranged to accommodate different physiologies. Communication systems incorporated visual, audio, and chemical information channels. Even the lighting had been calibrated for species with different visual ranges. You understand, said the Morrigan representative, pulsing with luminescent language patterns, that the Vexeri obtained proper authorization for this conquest. Your classification. Our classification was in error, Jandar interrupted, a breach of protocol that shocked the delegation. The evidence surrounds us. He gestured toward the viewport, where Earth hung in the blackness, a blue-white jewel against the void. No pre-unified species creates this in days. No pre-unified species repels a conquest fleet. No pre-unified species anticipates diplomatic protocols they've never encountered. Dr. Chen stepped forward. Perhaps we're something new then. And perhaps that means your entire classification system requires reconsideration. The chamber fell silent as the implications rippled through the delegation. Jandar felt an emotion rare among his species. Uncertainty, yes, but mixed with something else. A strange sense of witnessing something momentous. Indeed, Dr. Chen, he finally responded. And that is precisely why I'm here. The emergency session of the Galactic Authority Classification Committee convened in the Great Crystalline Chamber, representatives from 17 founding species arranged in concentric rings. The central holographic display showed Earth rotating slowly, data streams surrounding it like a luminous cloud. The evidence cannot be disputed, declared the senior Morrigan analyst, her form pulsing with emphatic light patterns. These humans display characteristics across multiple taxonomic categories. Their social structures combine elements of hive, pack, and individual organizational models. Their problem-solving approaches incorporate both linear and lateral methodologies. Their technology developed asymmetrically rather than following standard progression models. The Vexeri delegation chittered with obvious agitation. Anomalies do not justify special categorization, their representative insisted. Many conquest-eligible species display minor deviations. Minor. Counselor Jandar's scales rippled with subtle color changes indicating controlled outrage. They neutralized a fleet that should have overwhelmed them. They repurposed Vexeri technology within days of first contact. They anticipated diplomatic protocols they had never encountered. These are not minor deviations. Across the chamber, fierce debate erupted between traditionalists and reformists. Some counselors argued that humanity simply represented an unusual variant of pre-unified development. Others insisted a new classification was required. The stakes were enormous. Classification determined everything from conquest eligibility to trading rights, from technological exchange limitations to territorial expansion permissions. Meanwhile, on Earth, the process of studying the abandoned Vexari technology proceeded with remarkable speed. The International Coalition had established research centers across the globe, each focusing on different aspects of the alien systems. Dr. Elena Morozova, a quantum physicist from Novosibirsk, led the team examining Vexari propulsion technology. Their approach is fundamentally different from our theoretical models, she explained to visiting officials. They manipulate space-time through directed quantum entanglement rather than creating traditional warp fields. What amazed the observing authority scientists wasn't just the humans' ray of comprehension, but their immediate impulse to improve upon what they found. This configuration wastes approximately 30% of the initial energy input, Morozova continued, highlighting sections of the reverse-engineered schematics. We believe the efficiency could be significantly improved by introducing adaptive feedback mechanisms here and here. Her colleague, Dr. Quaimosi, nodded in agreement. The Vexari designs prioritize symmetry and standardization over efficiency. They sacrifice performance for uniformity. This pattern repeated across every field of study. Human medical researchers examined Vexari biology and immediately identified treatments for conditions the aliens had considered inevitable aspects of their physiology. Engineers discovered structural improvements to Vexari equipment that could enhance performance by significant margins. Linguists found nuances in the Vexari language that the species themselves had never consciously recognized. Most disruptive of all was humanity's approach to the captured Vexari soldiers. Rather than treating them as prisoners, humans offered them unprecedented autonomy, particularly the lower-caste workers and drones. Vexari, who had never made a significant decision in their lives, suddenly found themselves asked for opinions, offered choices, treated as individuals rather than replaceable units. The ripple effects were profound. Lower-caste Vexari began showing signs of increased cognitive function, developing interests and specializations that their rigid social hierarchy had previously suppressed. Several even requested permanent asylum on Earth, a concept so alien to Vexari culture that it lacked a direct translation in their language. In the authority chamber, Jandar presented this evidence with quiet intensity. We are not merely witnessing an unusual species, he concluded. We are witnessing an evolutionary catalyst, a species whose mere existence transforms those around them. If the Vexari had succeeded in their conquest, they would have discovered too late that humans don't simply get conquered. They adapt, they incorporate, and inevitably, they transform their conquerors. Admiral Kravnar's mandibles clicked rhythmically as he observed the tactical display aboard the inevitable dominance, flagship of the Vexari battle fleet. 100 warships arranged in perfect geometric formation, prepared to emerge from hyperspace near Earth's moon. Each vessel carried enough firepower to level continents. The combined fleet represented the largest military force the Vexari have deployed in 3 centuries. The High Command's instructions are explicit, he informed his bridge officers. This world cannot be allowed to continue its development. The humans have displayed aberrant characteristics that pose an existential threat to established galactic order. What remained unspoken was the true source of Vexari panic. The humans weren't just defeating them militarily. They were undermining the very foundation of Vexari society. Reports from the first invasion force included disturbing accounts of lower-caste Vexari developing individual identities, questioning commands, and even requesting to remain among humans. Such ideological contamination could collapse the rigid hierarchical structure that had defined their species for millennia. On Earth, the newly formed Planetary Defense Council received advance warning of the approaching armada from their unlikely allies. Several galactic authority species had discreetly provided technical assistance despite official neutrality protocols. The Morrigan had shared advanced shielding concepts. The Scythian had provided communication encryption methods. Even a faction of Vexari scientists, mostly specialists who had secretly chafed under their society's restrictions, had defected with critical tactical information. In the Primary Defense Coordination Center beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Chen studied the holographic display of Earth's integrated defense system. What had begun as a desperate improvisation had evolved into something unprecedented. A planetary shield combining dozens of technologies from different sources, all modified and improved through human innovation. The Vexari will expect us to have adapted their weapons and shields, she told the assembled military leaders. They'll have countermeasures prepared for those. What they cannot anticipate is how we've integrated technologies they consider incompatible. General Williams nodded thoughtfully. Their military doctrine emphasizes overwhelming force applied with absolute precision. They expect us to operate the same way. Exactly, Chen replied. So instead, we'll be unpredictable. The orbital platforms will shift defensive protocols randomly. Ground-based countermeasures will operate autonomously rather than following centralized commands. And our offensive capabilities, she smiled slightly. Those will incorporate some rather unconventional thinking. Across a conference table, 11-year-old Madeline looked up from her tablet. The child prodigy from Singapore had initially submitted her ideas through an online portal designed to collect civilian suggestions. Her concept for disrupting Vexari formations had proven so effective in simulations that she'd been invited to join the strategic team directly. They're too perfect, she explained with the clarity only children can maintain in complex situations. Their ships always maintain exact distances. If we can make just one ship move unpredictably, their whole formation will try to compensate. Like when you throw a pebble in water and the ripples mess up the reflection. Admiral Kravnar could never have conceived of such a strategic session. The concept of incorporating a child's perspective into military planning would have seemed not just inefficient, but dangerously irrational, which is precisely why the Vexari remained blind to the true nature of the threat they faced. When the massive Vexari fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect attack formation, they encountered not the disorganized resistance they expected, but a defense that operated according to principles they couldn't comprehend. Earth's countermeasures didn't just use different technologies. They used different thinking, incorporating game theory, artistic principles, and social dynamics alongside conventional military doctrine. As the first Vexari ships began to falter under the bewildering assault, Admiral Kravnar faced a realization that no Vexari commander had experienced in living memory: genuine uncertainty about the outcome of battle. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Authority had never before witnessed such an assembly. Representatives from nearly 800 species filled the tiered seating, many attending remotely through quantum projection. The formal recognition of a new member world was always significant, but Earth's admission carried unprecedented implications. Dr. Chen stood at the center of the chamber, the first human to address the full authority. Behind her stood a diverse delegation that had confused protocol officers. Rather than sending only high-ranking officials, Earth had included scientists, artists, children, and even ordinary citizens selected by lottery. This deliberate representation of human diversity made a statement before she spoke a single word. We come before you not as a unified voice, but as billions of individual voices that somehow, improbably, create harmony from our differences, she began. Humanity does not speak with one mind. We argue. We disagree. We debate endlessly. And from that beautiful chaos, we discover possibilities that no single perspective could imagine. Councillor Jandar, now serving as Earth's formal sponsor, stepped forward. The Classification Committee has completed its analysis. After extensive deliberation, we propose a new taxonomic category: adaptive collective intelligence. The chamber filled with the sounds of hundreds of translation devices rendering the term into different languages. For many species, the concept required entirely new linguistic structures. This classification acknowledges a paradox, Jandar continued. Humans function simultaneously as individuals and as a collective, but neither description captures their essence. They lack the specialized biology of hive species, yet achieve coordination without centralized control. They lack the uniform perspective of collective consciousness species, yet converge on solutions through distributed cognition. The formal presentation included examples that had astonished authority scientists. How human internet platforms could focus millions of individuals on solving problems without hierarchical direction. How competing human nations had transformed into collaborators within days of the Vexeri threat. How human children sometimes proposed solutions that eluded adult experts due to their freedom from conventional thinking patterns. Most disturbing to traditional authority members was the demonstration of humanity's transformative effect on other species. The delegation included several Vexeri defectors, former lower-caste workers who now displayed individual personalities, specialized interests, and creative capabilities previously thought biologically impossible for their kind. We cannot overstate the implications, Shandar concluded. Humanity doesn't merely represent a new classification. They represent an evolutionary catalyst that may fundamentally alter interspecies dynamics throughout known space. As the chamber erupted into multilingual debate, Dr. Chen shared a quiet moment with Jaltex, a former Vexeri drone who now served as a cultural liaison. "Your people fear change," Jaltex observed, his mandibles moving in patterns that no Vexeri had used before contact with humans, expressive gestures he had developed to compensate for his species' limited facial mobility. "We fear it too," Chen admitted, "but we've learned to embrace it anyway. That's the real secret of humanity. Not that we're fearless, but that we continue despite our fears." When the final vote came, it was not unanimous, but the outcome was clear. Earth would join the Galactic Authority with full member status and special classification. The Vexeri Empire officially protested and found themselves increasingly isolated as other species recognized the potential benefits of human collaboration. As the newly installed Earth communication array transmitted the news back home, celebrations erupted across the planet. Humans had faced extinction and emerged not just surviving but thriving. Their place in the cosmos forever changed. In the Galactic Database, a new advisory was added to the entry for Sol system. Warning: Earth represents an evolutionary inflection point. Species making contact should anticipate not merely exchange, but transformation. They do not adapt to the galaxy. The galaxy adapts to them.